Roman Reigns and Jey Uso team up to ambush Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed on Raw. Because on Monday Night Raw, the unthinkable happened. Out of nowhere, no warning, no entrance music, Roman Reigns and Jey Uso stormed the ring together and ambushed Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed like predators who'd been waiting for the perfect kill shot. Steel chairs. Super kicks. Spears. Chaos. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer, scream, or just drop their jaws. And just like that, the rules changed. Jey didn't just join Roman. He chose violence. And if you're thinking this was a one-off, think again. This wasn't a reunion. It was a message. And now, Rollins' empire is officially under siege. Let's break down every brutal second of what just went down. Have you ever seen the moment the ground shifts beneath a company's feet? Not just a surprise. Not just a twist. We're talking about a moment that makes the entire WWE Universe sit up and say, wait. Did that actually just happen? It didn't come with pyro. It didn't come with theme music. It came with blood in the air, chairs clashing, and two men who were never supposed to stand together again. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. Together. In sync. On Raw. And not just appearing, ambushing. Seth Rollins. Braun Breaker. Bronson Reed. All left in ruins. There was no warning. No build-up. No handshake. Just violence. And in a company where everything is choreographed to the second, that chaos? That unpredictability? It felt dangerous, and that's why it hit harder than any spear Roman Reigns has ever delivered. Let's get one thing straight from the start, this wasn't just a run-in. This was a statement. A message to the entire locker room, the entire brand, the entire system, we're back. And we're not playing by the rules anymore. To understand the why, we'll break down the moment. To understand the how, we'll track the history. To understand the danger, we'll analyze the fallout. But before we get into all of that, let's take you back to the moment when it all began, when everything changed. Raw was halfway through a banger of a night. The crowd was buzzing. Rollins had just wrapped a match that had all the ingredients: intensity, drama, athleticism. Braun Breaker had looked dangerous as ever, and Bronson Reed, always the wild card, had added that unpredictable flavor to the mix. And then, bam. The lights didn't cut. There wasn't an ominous theme song building tension. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso didn't walk out. They stormed. The camera was on Rollins when the first chair shot landed. You could see it in his face, a moment of recognition, then pain, then disbelief. And Jey? He didn't hesitate. He didn't look around for approval. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't tagging along. He was leading the charge. Spears. Super kicks. Silence. The beatdown wasn't pretty. It wasn't flashy. It was brutal, methodical. The kind of ambush that isn't about sending a message to your opponent, it's about sending a message to the world. The thud of a chair against Braun Breaker's back. The snap of a super kick that echoed through the arena. Roman, standing tall in the center of the ring like a returning king reclaiming his throne. And Jey? Not conflicted. Not torn. Focused. For months, WWE had been telling the story of Jey Uso as the man trying to find his way, to build his own identity, to escape the gravitational pull of the bloodline. But on this night, that identity came full circle, not as a lost son returning, but as a warrior who chose war. A reunion? Not quite. Let's kill this idea right now. This was not a reunion. This was not Roman and Jey patching things up and riding into the sunset together. This was a calculated, cold-blooded alignment of two men who have figured out what the rest of the locker room hasn't. You don't beat the system by playing nice. You burn it down. You take what you want. You hit first and make sure there's no one left to hit back. Jay didn't look happy to be back. Roman didn't look relieved. They looked ready. Go back and watch the footage. Frame by frame. After Rollins is dropped by the spear and Reigns stands over him, Jay steps in and does something that tells you everything you need to know. He doesn't look at Seth. He doesn't look at the crowd. He looks at Roman. And Roman nods. That's it. No words exchanged. Just a nod. A signal between two men who now understand the stakes. They're not looking to run the brand. They're looking to own it. So why these three targets? You might be asking. Why go after Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed? Rollins is obvious. The World Heavyweight Champion. The man who's become WWE's workhorse. He's the pillar. The flag bearer. The loudest critic of the Bloodline's tactics. Attacking him isn't just about ego. It's about sending a message to everyone who thinks the top spot is safe. But Braun Breaker? Bronson Reed? Here's where it gets interesting. Breaker is the new generation, explosive, young, dominant. He represents everything WWE wants in a future star. And that makes him a threat. Reed? He's the chaos agent. The mercenary. The wild card who can tip the balance if someone gets to him first. By targeting all three, Roman and Jay weren't just ambushing a match. They were striking down the past, the present, and the future in one coordinated assault. Here's the truth, fans thought the Bloodline was over. The Civil War storyline. The family implosion. The exile of Jay. The silence of Roman. It was wrapped. Done. Finished. But wrestling doesn't work like that. Real power never fades quietly. Roman Reigns has been silent for months. No appearances. No interviews. No statements. And now, this is how he comes back? Not to reclaim a belt. Not to announce a match. But to destroy? That's not a comeback. That's an invasion. What happens now? Now, Raw is no longer safe. Every superstar in the locker room now knows, no brand is protected. No match is safe. If Roman and Jay can show up unannounced, no one is untouchable. And that's the beauty of what just happened. It wasn't just violence. It was calculated, strategic disruption. Because what's more terrifying than a villain with a plan? Two of them. Working together. This video isn't just a recap. This is a full breakdown of what just changed in WWE forever. We're not just going to show you the highlights, we're going to dissect them, expose the subtext, and analyze what this alliance really means. Because one thing is clear, Seth Rollins' empire is under siege. Jey Uso didn't just return, he chose sides. And Roman Reigns didn't come back to reclaim his seat at the table. He came back to flip the whole table over. This is your new era of WWE. Get ready. We're just getting started. No theme music. No Titantron. No countdown. Just pain. Sudden, sharp, and precise. It was halfway through Monday Night Raw. The crowd was in rhythm. A high-stakes six-man tag was wrapping up. Seth Rollins had just launched into his signature offense, the fans were singing, the lights were bright, the camera was locked on the action, everything was in place. Then the camera jerked. The angle shifted. Confusion on commentary. A blur on the screen. And then chaos. Roman Reigns appeared out of nowhere. The last time fans saw Roman in a WWE ring, he was walking out of the Bloodline implosion, dethroned in spirit, if not title. His silence since then had become deafening. No tweets. No promos. No interviews. For all intents and purposes, Roman Reigns had become a ghost. Until now. He didn't walk down the ramp. He didn't step through the curtains. He didn't wait for the lights to dim. He slid into the ring from the side, just as Seth turned his head to the crowd. And Roman struck. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't a warning. It was a spear that split Seth Rollins in half. The commentary team froze. The crowd didn't even react for the first 2 seconds. That's how shocking it was. The spear was so clean, so devastating, that Seth folded like a broken ladder. The match halted. The referee shouted, then backed off instinctively. Bronson Reed turned, only to eat a steel chair across the shoulder from Jey Uso. Wait, Jey Uso? The confusion on everyone's face told the story. This wasn't just an ambush. This was a betrayal of expectations. No one expected Roman Reigns to return that night. No one expected Jey Uso to be by his side. And no one expected the two of them to work as one, again, after everything they'd been through. But there they were, side by side. And in perfect sync. The ambush turned surgical. Jey targeted Braun Breaker, delivering a super kick that echoed through the arena. Breaker, stunned, stumbled into Roman's grasp and was taken down with a Samoan drop that felt symbolic more than physical. This was not a random assault. This was war. 3 men in the ring, 3 targets neutralized in under 45 seconds. No wasted motion. No showboating. Just destruction. The cameraman didn't know where to focus. Cut to Rollins, he was barely moving. Cut to Breaker, down on all fours, gasping. Cut to Roman, standing tall, eyes locked forward, unmoved. It felt unreal. Not because of the violence. WWE sees that every week. It felt unreal because of who was involved, and how quickly it all happened. Jey Uso, who had walked away from Roman Reigns on live television. Who had fought against the very empire they built together. Who had declared he was done being anyone's right-hand man. And now he was back. Not with hesitation. Not with conflict in his eyes. With purpose. There was no doubt in his face. No guilt. No remorse. This was a man who had made his choice, and was making it clear. And Roman? His face said it all. He wasn't here for redemption. He wasn't here to reclaim a title. He wasn't here to explain anything. He was here to send a message. This wasn't just about hurting people. This was about telling the WWE Universe that control wasn't won with words or popularity. Control was taken. Seized. With steel and silence. The arena finally caught up to the moment. Boos started pouring in. Some cheers too, raw, emotional reactions from fans who couldn't believe what they were seeing. The kind of reaction WWE can't script, only provoke. Roman took it all in. He didn't gesture. He didn't smile. He simply stood over Seth Rollins, then glanced at Jey. The two locked eyes. And nodded. That was it. That nod said everything. They weren't back to rebuild. They were back to destroy. Security finally hit the ring. Late. Staggered. Confused. Roman and Jey slid out before anyone could make contact. They didn't rush. They didn't run. They walked around the ring slowly, taking it all in like hunters surveying a successful kill. No words were spoken. They disappeared just as suddenly as they had arrived. The damage was left behind, 3 top-tier superstars laid out, commentary in disarray, fans still not sure if what they'd witnessed was real. That's the brilliance of the moment. It didn't feel like a planned segment. It felt like something went wrong. Like something off-script had bled into reality. And that's when WWE is at its best, when it blurs the lines so effectively, so completely, that even the most seasoned fan stops and says, "Is this supposed to be happening?" Let's go back and examine the physicality of the moment. The spear on Seth wasn't the theatrical spear Roman uses for pay-per-views. It was faster, meaner, more desperate. It looked like a move designed not to entertain, but to wound. Jey's use of the steel chair was equally telling. He didn't swing wildly. He targeted the shoulder joint of Bronson Reed. A strategic choice. He didn't want chaos. He wanted compliance. Breaker? He didn't even get a fence off. That's key. This was not a fight. It was a hit. Roman and Jay executed a clean, fast strike on the three biggest physical threats on Raw, and made their exit before any real response could form. This wasn't about matches. This was about dominance. The aftermath was even more telling. Rollins was helped out of the ring, holding his ribs, gasping for breath. There was no promo. No retaliation. No, we'll get them next week. Because how do you respond to that? It wasn't a feud. It was a declaration. And the most terrifying part? They didn't say a single word. No, acknowledge me. No, we're back. Just fists. Feet. Steel. Then silence. That silence? Louder than anything Roman's ever said on a mic. Because it told the world, we don't need to explain ourselves anymore. We've done that. We've told our stories. We've played the game. Now we take what's ours. And if the locker room doesn't like it, they can get in line with the bodies we just left behind. The lights never cut out. The cameras never faded to black. But make no mistake, for a few minutes on Raw, everything did go dark. Because the rules changed. The hierarchy shifted. And the chaos wasn't just physical, it was philosophical. This wasn't the return of Roman Reigns. This was the return of fear. The kind of fear that makes even the strongest think twice before walking to the ring. And the kind of fear that tells us, loud and clear, no one is safe anymore. Not on Raw. Not in WWE. Not anywhere. There's a myth in wrestling. The idea that dominance is a solo act. That the alpha can walk into any arena, beat down whoever they want, and stand tall without help. But Roman Reigns has never been about myths. Roman builds legacies, and legacies aren't built alone. So, when he returned to Raw, without announcement, without fanfare, he didn't come to stand by himself. He brought someone with him. Someone unexpected. Someone personal. Jey Uso. The same man who once called him abusive. The same man who walked out on him. The same man who broke the family apart. That's the man Roman Reigns chose to bring into the fire. Not Solo Sikoa. Not Jimmy. Not Paul Heyman. Jey. And that choice says everything. Because Roman Reigns is not just playing checkers. He's playing chess, and he just moved his most volatile piece back into play. Let's unpack why. This wasn't about nostalgia. This wasn't about forgiveness. This was about strategy. Jey Uso was the weapon Roman needed. The one that cuts deepest. The one people still trust, until he turns and takes their throat out. And make no mistake, Jey didn't come back reluctantly. He came back deliberately. And that changes everything. To understand why, you need to go all the way back to the beginning of the bloodline, before the betrayals, before the tribal chief era even had a name. Back to the moment Roman Reigns looked across the ring at his own cousin and told him, fall in line. Back to the emotional manipulations. The title defenses wrapped in psychological warfare. The head of the table speeches that blurred the line between character and control. It wasn't just storytelling. It was emotional dissection. Jey Uso wasn't just a sidekick. He was the test subject. The proving ground for Roman's reign. Their rivalry turned into partnership. Their partnership turned into dominance. And just when Jey thought he'd escaped the gravitational pull of Roman Reigns, he got dragged back in. Not because he was weak. But because he realized something terrifying, he was never meant to leave. Roman didn't chase him down. Roman didn't beg. He waited. And Jey? He returned. That's the part most fans can't reconcile. After everything Roman did, after everything Jay said about wanting out, wanting freedom, wanting his own path, why come back? The answer is simple. Because in WWE, loyalty doesn't mean trust. Loyalty means survival. When you stand with Roman Reigns, you win. Period. You get pay-per-view main events. You get storyline gravity. You get screen time, momentum, purpose. You get power. And Jay has tasted that power. He's lived it. He's worn it around his neck like a championship. And when he walked away, he didn't just walk away from Roman. He walked away from relevance. For a few months, Jey Uso was his own man. He had big matches. Emotional promos. The crowd sang for him. But it didn't stick. Not really. The story didn't have structure. The momentum didn't build. The payoff didn't come. Because as much as the fans wanted to believe Jay could be a solo star, he never felt finished. And that's what Roman offered him. Not just a role. A mission. Together again, they're not just reliving old alliances. They're rewriting them. This isn't the bloodline. This is something sharper. Leaner. More dangerous. Roman didn't bring everyone back. He brought Jay. Because Jay is the only one who's proven he can stand beside Roman and not be swallowed whole. Solo Sikoa is unpredictable. Jimmy Uso is emotionally compromised. Paul Heyman is a mouthpiece, not a weapon. But Jay is war-tested. He's bled for Roman. He's fought Roman. He's fought for Roman. And now, after all of that? He's fighting with Roman. It's not about forgiveness. It's about recognition. Jay finally sees what Roman's been saying all along: the world doesn't reward morality. It rewards strength. Ruthlessness. Dominance. All the things Roman taught him to embrace, and all the things he tried to leave behind. But the truth is, Jay was never supposed to be the hero. He was always going to be the executioner. The crowd may cheer him. But Roman owns him. That's the magic of this duo. They don't operate on affection. They operate on function. Roman is the strategy. Jay is the strike. And now they've closed the gap that once tore them apart. Look back at the ambush on Raw. Jay didn't wait for Roman's cue. He moved independently. Targeted his mark. Executed. No hesitation. That's not a follower. That's a lieutenant. Someone who understands the mission so well, he doesn't need to be told what to do. That's what makes them terrifying. Because when Roman and Jay were last aligned, they ruled WWE. But back then, Jay still had questions. Doubts. Now? Doubt is gone. What's left is something colder. Roman didn't come alone because he didn't have to. He came with the one man who can do what he can't. Make pain personal. This isn't about belts. This isn't about championships. This is about domination through fear. Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, they weren't just attacked. They were selected. Roman didn't bring an army. He didn't need numbers. He brought Jey Uso. Because Jay isn't just family. He's a weapon. And the message that sends? To everyone in the locker room? Is that Roman Reigns isn't playing by the same rules anymore. He doesn't need a faction. He just needs one man who knows how to hurt people the way he does. Roman and Jay together again doesn't mean comfort. It means escalation. Every move they make now will carry more weight. Because there's no family drama to hide behind. There's only purpose. This new alignment is built on shared damage, not shared blood. And if that sounds cold? Good. Because that's exactly how Roman Reigns wants it. He didn't come back to Raw to reclaim his past. He came to rewrite his future. And the only man he trusts to help him do it is the same man he once broke to prove a point. now they're both broken. And that makes them unstoppable. Jey Uso didn't come back to hug it out. He didn't come back to make peace, to mend fences, or to pick up where things left off. He came back to do damage. And the moment that steel chair cracked across Bronson Reed's back, any doubt disappeared. This wasn't a confused man caught in a moment. This was a man who had made a choice, a deliberate, violent, unapologetic choice. And that choice didn't just change Raw. It changed Jey Uso forever. Because let's be honest, Jey had every reason not to be there. He had every reason to stay away from Roman Reigns. Every reason to keep walking his own road. Every reason to stay in the light, in the love of the crowd, in the safety of a solo run. He had walked away before. He had declared his independence in front of the world. He had the backing of fans who saw him not as a sidekick, not as a brother, but as his own man. He had momentum. He had sympathy. And then he threw it all away. Why? Because the truth is, Jey Uso never left violence behind. He just paused it. That version of Jey, the one walking down the ramp solo, with the crowd singing along, he was still learning who he was without Roman. But that question never got answered. Because WWE doesn't give you space to figure things out. It demands identity. Clarity. Action. You're either a contender or an afterthought. A threat or a target. Jey was stuck in between. And the moment Roman Reigns showed back up with intent in his eyes, Jey made a decision that's going to define his legacy. He chose to stop waiting. And start hitting. The chair shot was the moment of no return. Not just because of what it did to Bronson Reed's body, but what it did to Jey's narrative. He wasn't being manipulated. He wasn't being coerced. He was participating. And not passively. Watch the footage. Jey didn't check Roman's reaction after his first strike. He didn't glance to the side, waiting for approval. He didn't hesitate. He delivered that chair shot with purpose. One clean motion, no wasted energy. He came in ready to make noise. But more importantly, he came in ready to hurt people. This was Jey Uso's return to what made him dangerous in the first place. Not the family drama. Not the main event Jey storyline. But the raw aggression. The need to remind everyone that he wasn't just Roman's shadow. He was Roman's reflection. And that makes him the most terrifying person on the roster. Because Jey Uso knows how to play the game. He knows how to gain sympathy, how to pull at heartstrings, how to cry on camera and get the crowd behind him. But when he flips the switch, there's no one meaner. That's the version of Jey we saw on Raw. A man who isn't hiding behind narrative arcs or emotional beats. A man who's come full circle. But not in redemption, in vengeance. Because whether he'll admit it or not, Jey has unfinished business. With Seth Rollins. With the crowd. With himself. When Jey left Roman the first time, he did it in a burst of emotion. But emotion fades. And when it did? What was left? Silence. Confusion. Mid-card feuds. The truth is, Jey's solo run wasn't a failure, but it wasn't the revolution people wanted it to be either. He had big moments, sure. But none of them felt defining. They felt transitional. Like stepping stones to something bigger. Now we know what that something bigger was. It was this. It was the moment Jey walked back into the fire, not because he was lost, but because he finally knew what kind of weapon he wanted to be. Violence isn't a fallback for Jey Uso. It's his language. His comfort zone. His control. Look back at his history. The matches he excelled in? Street fights. Tag team wars. No DQ main events. The moments where he bled. Where he screamed. Where he teetered between breakdown and blackout. That's where Jey Uso becomes undeniable. So, when people say why would Jey go back after everything Roman did to him, they're asking the wrong question. They should be asking, why did he ever leave in the first place? Because what happened on Raw wasn't a betrayal. It was alignment. Roman Reigns may have broken Jey Uso's spirit once, but he also rebuilt him into something stronger. Not loyal. Not submissive. Just focused. Dangerous. Willing. And now, fully aware of what he's capable of when he stops holding back. The old Jey was a man torn between doing what's right and doing what works. The new Jey? He's not torn. He's done pretending there's nobility in losing. He's done fighting uphill battles just to prove he's different. He's embracing who he was always meant to be. Not a hero. A storm. Jey's violence isn't mindless. It's specific. It's intentional. It's earned. Because to reach this level of aggression and control, you have to first believe in your own power. You have to stop apologizing for it. That's what Jey has done. He's no longer apologizing for being the kind of man who finishes fights instead of starting conversations. And the most powerful moment of all wasn't the chair shot. It was the second one. That's when the camera caught the shift. The first hit? That was the return. The second? That was confirmation. Of mindset. Of conviction. Of evolution. Jey isn't just back. He's different. He's colder. More precise. And maybe more committed than Roman himself. Because Roman still plays games. He still has layers, complications, speeches. But Jey's done talking. You could see it on his face during the ambush. Nothing theatrical. Nothing taunting. Just a clenched jaw. A locked gaze. A focus honed like a blade. This is a man who's done being conflicted. That's the scariest kind of heel. Not the one who laughs. The one who never breaks eye contact while swinging a chair into someone's spine. And here's where it gets dangerous for the rest of WWE. There's no one who can out-violence Jey Uso when he's this version of himself. He's not the biggest. He's not the fastest. But he's the most unhinged when it counts. And when he's standing shoulder to shoulder with Roman, willing, hungry, and informed, that's not just a threat. That's a formula. A blueprint for destruction. Not the kind that burns bright and fast. The kind that infects. Spreads. Corrupts. Jey's return wasn't a moment. It was a virus injected straight into the heart of Raw. And it's going to spread. Because the way he looked at Rollins before the final chair shot. That wasn't anger. It was calculation. That's how you know he's crossed the line. He's not attacking out of rage. He's attacking out of design. That's evolution. That's why this isn't just a return. It's a coronation. Not with titles. With intent. Jey Uso has chosen violence, not as a tactic, but as an identity. And now that he's chosen it? There's no turning back. Not for him. Not for Roman. And definitely not for anyone who gets in their way. Every ambush tells a story. Not just about the attackers, but about the targets. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso didn't clear out half the Raw roster at random. They chose their victims carefully. They didn't strike wildly, they struck symbolically. Seth Rollins. Braun Breaker. Bronson Reed. 3 very different superstars. 3 very different paths. But in that moment, in that ring, they were treated exactly the same. Outnumbered. Outgunned. Taken apart. Not because they were weak. But because they were in the way. And more importantly, because each of them represents something Roman and Jey are trying to destroy. Let's start with the obvious one. Seth Rollins. The visionary. The world heavyweight champion. The architect. The last surviving pillar from Roman's Shield past. Roman and Seth have a history thicker than most full-time rivalries. They've been brothers, enemies, reluctant allies, and ideological opposites. And for the past 2 years, they've occupied 2 different worlds. Roman reigned on SmackDown. Seth ruled Raw. Roman had the undisputed Universal Championship. Seth carried the new World Heavyweight title. And though they didn't collide weekly, the tension never really disappeared. Because as much as Seth tried to build something new, his shadow always pointed back to Roman. And Roman? He never said it, but every time he dismissed the new title, called it the workhorse belt, he was drawing a line in the sand. You can have your show, he implied. But I own the kingdom. So when Roman returned, and made a statement without saying a word, who else could be his first target? It had to be Seth. Not just for history, but for strategy. Because Seth Rollins is more than a champion, he's an energy source. The Raw brand runs on his rhythm. His open challenges. His presence. His promos. His charisma. He's the face that keeps things moving when no one else can. Take him out, even temporarily, and Raw loses its center of gravity. That's why Roman speared him first. It wasn't just a message. It was a blackout. Cut the power. Let chaos fill the vacuum. Roman didn't just want to hurt Seth. He wanted to disorient the show. And it worked. Because when Seth was down, the entire tone shifted. The fans didn't know what to cheer for. The commentary lost its anchor. The pacing broke. Everything slowed. Everything darkened. That's not an accident. That's design. And then came the others. Braun Breaker. Fresh off a run of dominant performances. A next-gen talent with main event energy written all over him. He's fast, explosive, intimidating. He's the kind of guy WWE loves to push, and for good reason. There's an edge to Breaker that makes him dangerous. But what makes him valuable to WWE is also what makes him dangerous to Roman Reigns. Because Braun represents momentum. Unstoppable, undeniable momentum. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. Roman sees that. He knows the formula. A rising star. A legacy name. A powerful frame. A mean streak. That's what Roman was when he broke in. That's what he was when he formed the Shield. That's what he was when he ascended. So he knows exactly what happens if Braun Breaker is left unchecked. He turns from future to threat. Roman has always been 2 steps ahead, and this was one of those steps. Taking Braun down before he even looks in Roman's direction isn't cowardice. It's dominance. Make the young lion understand the rules early, before he builds a rebellion in his head. Let him know this isn't his yard yet. Because when Braun Breaker finally stands across from Roman Reigns, that match will mean 10 times more. And Roman will have already set the tone. The message is clear: you're not ready. Not for this level. Not yet. So sit down. And then there's Bronson Reed. The wild card. At first glance, Reed might seem like the outlier. Not a title holder. Not in a main event storyline. Not a legacy name. But that's what makes him dangerous. He's unpredictable. Bronson Reed walks into matches like a hitman. Quiet. Measured. Devastating. He doesn't cut long promos. He doesn't beg for camera time. He destroys people and leaves. And in a moment like the Raw ambush, unpredictability is a liability. Roman Reigns doesn't like X factors. He builds his control through pattern. Routine. Psychological submission. But you can't play mind games with a man who doesn't play games at all. Bronson Reed doesn't have allegiances. He has missions. And while he wasn't a direct threat to Roman's spot, he was a threat to the outcome. He could have fought back. He could have swung momentum. So Roman and Jey neutralized him quickly. Fast. Clean. No showmanship. Just violence. Because that's what Reed represents in WWE. Raw power. No fluff. No narrative baggage. That's the kind of man you disable first. And it's what makes his targeting all the more telling. This wasn't personal. It was tactical. Roman's never been one to pick fights without purpose. And picking Bronson Reed? That was a preventative measure. Take out the variable. Control the room. So when fans ask why these three were picked, here's the truth, because each one stood for a different threat. Rollins, control and influence. Breaker, youth and inevitability. Reed, chaos and disruption. By taking them out in a single strike, Roman and Jay didn't just weaken Raw, they defined their mission. They are not back to challenge. They are back to erase. And for Seth, Breaker, and Reed, this isn't over. This is the beginning of a war they didn't sign up for. Seth Rollins will want revenge. But the real question is, will he be able to stay ahead of the story? Because now Roman has the element of surprise. Jay has the green light. And Seth, for all his resilience, has been physically compromised. For Breaker, this is a reality check. He's never been manhandled like that. He's never been blindsided in such a surgical way. This was a baptism. A wake-up call. If he doesn't absorb this moment and evolve, he'll be swallowed. Because WWE doesn't slow down for anyone. Especially not rookies with potential. You either adapt. Or you vanish. And for Bronson Reed? This might be the most interesting arc of all. Because a man like him doesn't take kindly to being used as a message. He's not in this for status. He's in it for impact. And Roman just gave him a reason to focus that impact. Don't be surprised if Reed becomes the silent hunter in this war. He won't tweet about it. He won't talk about it. But he will respond. And when he does, Roman might find that for all his planning, he missed something. The quiet ones don't bark. They bite. And now? Roman's given three different men three different reasons to come for his head. Rollins will want justice. Breaker will want respect. Reed will want blood. But for now, they're all victims. Three fallen pieces on the Raw chessboard. And Roman? He's standing at the center, unmoved. Because this ambush wasn't about starting fights. It was about drawing lines. And the moment that first chair landed, every person in the arena knew, those lines aren't going away. They're getting deeper. WWE is a company built on noise. Pyro pop promos. Anthems. Catchphrases. But what Roman Reigns and Jey Uso pulled off on Raw wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was focused. And that's what made it deadly. This wasn't chaos. It was strategy. The kind of strategy you don't notice until the bodies are on the ground. Because that ambush didn't happen by accident. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment attack. It wasn't random violence. It was a message delivered with method. Let's start with the timing. Roman and Jay didn't show up at the beginning of Raw. They didn't interrupt a backstage segment or jump someone during an interview. They waited. They allowed the night to settle into rhythm. They let the audience fall into expectation. They let Rollins and company reach the apex of their momentum. Then they struck. That's not impulsive. That's surgical. Because in wrestling, just like in war, timing is everything. Hit too early and you lose impact. Hit too late and you miss your window. But Roman and Jay hit at the precise moment when the crowd was most relaxed. That's when fear hits hardest. When you're comfortable. The spear from Roman wasn't the start of a fight. It was the closing act of a plan already in motion. And the plan wasn't just about pain. It was about psychology. Let's break that down. Seth Rollins, for all his mind games and charisma, thrives on performance energy. His entrances. His ring gear. His connection to the audience. The chants. The song. The pacing. Interrupt that rhythm, and you don't just hurt his body. You fracture his mind. Roman understands that. He's been across the ring from Seth enough times to know what fuels him. So when Roman speared him out of nowhere, without music, without a stare down, without even a warning glance, he wasn't just attacking Seth's ribs. He was attacking Seth's identity. Rollins was left gasping, not just from pain, but from confusion. He didn't know the rules anymore. And when the rules shift without warning, even veterans flinch. That's the strategy. Rewire expectations. Break routine. Control the mental terrain. Now, Jay's role in the attack is where things get really clever. He wasn't a backup. He was the specialist. Roman hit hard. But Jay hit smart. His first target? Bronson Reed. Why? Because Bronson was the most likely to react instinctively. The most likely to fight back. Neutralizing him first wasn't an emotional choice. It was logistical. Take out the wild card. Remove the immediate threat. Then shift to containment. After Bronson, Jay turned to Braun Breaker. And here's where it gets interesting. He didn't just super kick him once and move on. He stalked him. Kept his eyes locked. Made sure Breaker felt the presence, not just the pain. That's strategy too. Because Braun Breaker is prideful. He's powerful. And more importantly, he's inexperienced. Jay understands how to rattle a young superstar. You don't just hurt him physically. You imprint on him. Make sure he remembers your eyes, your voice, your weight when he's down on the mat. That's psychological warfare at the personal level. And it's effective. Roman and Jay didn't try to steal the show. They tried to dismantle it. With method. With pacing. With roles. Roman initiated. Jay controlled. The symmetry of their attack is also key. Go back and watch the footage again. They never crossed each other. Never bumped. Never miscommunicated. Jay handled his side. Roman handled his. That's not improvisation. That's a rehearsed operation. When Roman stood over Seth, Jay didn't get in his way. When Jay leveled Braun Breaker, Roman didn't interrupt. They had lanes. Zones of control. That kind of discipline isn't built overnight. That's muscle memory. That's shared combat experience. That's the bloodline's ghost reaching out of the grave. Even without Solo. Without Jimmy. Without Heyman. That connection remains. But make no mistake, this isn't about nostalgia. This is evolution. Because this time, their unity isn't built on manipulation or tradition. It's built on tactical advantage. Roman didn't bring Jay back because of emotion. He brought him back because of efficiency. There's no one better at reading a ring in real time than Jey Uso. He doesn't need a manager shouting cues. He doesn't need signals. He watches body language. He reads breath. He strikes when he sees the moment. And more than that, he knows how Roman thinks. He knows when to push and when to hold. That understanding was on full display during the ambush. Jay didn't look to Roman for direction. Roman didn't shout commands. They moved like wolves. Independent. Aligned. Deadly. This is the next phase of Roman reigns. Not the tribal chief commanding an empire. But Roman reigns as a ghost in the system, disrupting without warning, controlling without presence. And Jay is the delivery mechanism. He's the one who applies the violence with precision. Let's also talk about restraint. They could have kept going. They could have grabbed mics. Cut promos. Mocked the victims. Soaked up the heat. But they didn't. They left. They walked out the same way they came in, quiet, calm, controlled. That's power. Because anyone can show up and yell. But it takes a different kind of threat to hurt three men and say nothing about it. That silence echoes longer than any punch. It gives the victim space to imagine what's next. And that's the strategy behind the slam. It's not about the moment, it's about the ripple effect. Every person in the locker room saw what happened. They saw how fast the attack came. How deliberate it was. How complete. And now they're thinking, if that was Rollins, Breakker, and Reed, what chance do I have? That's fear. Not hype. Not storyline drama. Fear. The most valuable commodity in wrestling psychology. Once you plant it, it grows everywhere. Roman and Jay didn't just win a battle on Raw. They colonized the mental space of the entire roster. They disrupted the ecosystem. And they didn't need fireworks to do it. They needed timing. Target selection. Execution. And silence. That's real control. And that's what makes them more dangerous than ever. Because this isn't about championships anymore. It's about making people afraid to breathe when the lights stay on too long. It's about changing what safety means. Roman Reigns didn't return to challenge someone to a match. He returned to change the way people move backstage. And Jey Uso? He's the edge of that blade. That's the strategy. Attack fast. Hit hard. Leave quiet. Let the silence haunt them. That's how you win before the next match even begins. When Roman Reigns and Jey Uso launched their ambush on Raw, they didn't just shake up the current roster. They stirred up the ashes of a dynasty. Because whether Roman meant to or not, that attack forced one question back into the spotlight, the one everyone thought had already been buried: is the bloodline back? And if it is, what kind of monster are we dealing with now? Let's be clear, what we saw on Raw didn't look like a reunion. There was no sign of Jimmy Uso. No Solo Sikoa. No Paul Heyman. No championship belts. No acknowledgement ceremony. There was no symbolism, no tribal dance, no pageantry. Just violence. That's what makes it complicated. Because while the bodies hit the floor like they used to, the structure of the bloodline we once knew is gone. The Roman Reigns who returned wasn't the head of the table giving orders to his cousins. He wasn't standing above them. He was standing with Jey. And that difference matters. The old bloodline operated like a monarchy. Roman was king. Everyone else served him. He ruled with pressure, guilt, manipulation. He called the shots. They took the beatings. The gold stayed in the family. But on Raw, there was no gold. No orders. No family drama. Just two men executing a hit. That's why this isn't a reunion. It's a reconfiguration. The bloodline isn't back. Something new is being born in its place. Something more dangerous, because this version doesn't care about family bonds or legacy stories. It's not about blood anymore. It's about power. And maybe that's what it always was. But now, the mask is off. And here's the most chilling part: this may not even be Roman's design alone. It could be Jey's too. Because the Jey Uso we saw on Raw didn't look like he needed direction. He looked like an equal. An enforcer with agency. A partner in punishment. So where does that leave the rest of the bloodline? Let's start with Solo Sikoa. The silent assassin. The enforcer who stepped in when Jimmy and Jey fractured. The man Paul Heyman once called the next tribal chief. Solo's role in all of this is now unstable. Because if Roman and Jey are realigned without him, that either means Solo has been cast out, or he's the ticking time bomb waiting to explode. No one has heard from Solo since the Raw ambush. No tweet. No segment. No presence. Which is exactly how Roman likes it. Silence keeps everyone guessing. But make no mistake, Solo is a factor. The moment he decides where he stands will either strengthen this new alliance, or threaten it. And Solo doesn't operate on loyalty alone. He operates on purpose. He followed Roman because Roman gave him a mission. But if Jay has returned without him, what does that say about Solo's position? Has he been demoted? Or is he about to pick a side in a war no one fully understands yet? And what about Jimmy? The brother caught in the middle. The twin who betrayed Jay to protect him, then watched his own world fall apart. Jimmy's absence from the Raw ambush wasn't just logistical. It was symbolic. He wasn't needed. He wasn't wanted. For a man who once called himself the glue, that has to burn. And now, the very family he broke himself to hold together is moving forward without him. So, what happens when Jimmy responds? Because he will respond. He's too proud to fade away. Too damaged to ignore it. But which way will he go? Back to Roman, desperate for purpose? Back to Jay, begging for redemption? Or neither, choosing chaos as his new identity? This is the fracture point. What Roman and Jay did on Raw didn't just injure three superstars. It cracked the ground beneath every bloodline member past and present. This isn't about belts anymore. It's about belonging. And right now, only two people belong, Roman and Jay. The rest? Drifting. And we haven't even mentioned Paul Heyman yet. Because his silence is the loudest of all. Heyman lives on control. On optics. On being 3 steps ahead. But this return? This re-emergence of Roman Reigns with a reborn Jey Uso? That wasn't Heyman's play. There was no introduction. No guidance. No spin. And that tells you something. Roman didn't need Heyman this time. Because what he's building now isn't for presentation. It's for war. Heyman may still try to catch up. He may still align with whoever holds the real power. But if Roman's silence on Raw means anything, it means this: the era of explanation is over. This isn't a dynasty anymore. It's a weapon. Which brings us to the core question: is this a resurrection? Or a rejection of the bloodline? And the answer is both. The bloodline, as we knew it, is dead. The tribal theater. The family dinners. The Usos conflicted and emotional. Heyman whispering in corners. The gold lined across their waists. Gone. But something darker remains. A splinter. Sharpened. Streamlined. Deadlier than ever. Roman and Jay are no longer playing characters in a family saga. They're predators with a shared past and a shared agenda. That agenda? Erase the idea that anyone is safe. Especially those who think the bloodline is behind them. Because the most dangerous thing about the Raw ambush wasn't what happened in the ring. It's what happened after. Nothing. No statement. No promo. No post-show exclusive. Just a trail of bodies and the implication that more are coming. That's not a legacy. That's a threat. Roman Reigns has always controlled the story. But now, he's erased it. And Jey Uso? He's the new pen. Together, they're rewriting everything, without the parts that made them human. Without the speeches. The emotion. The regrets. Just purpose. Just pain. So is this the bloodline reborn? Not quite. The family is fractured. But the force behind it? That's alive. And it's no longer bound by rules. No longer defined by tribal declarations or island metaphors. This is not about identity. It's about intent. The bloodline was once a family story. Now it's a hit squad. And the first job? Raw. The next? Who knows? Because now, every superstar has to ask, am I next? Because this isn't a stable anymore. It's a ghost story. And Roman and Jay? They're the ones who come knocking when the lights stay on too long. In WWE, chaos doesn't stop at the ring. When Roman Reigns and Jey Uso ambushed Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed, the shock didn't end when the cameras cut to commercial. It followed everyone backstage. Because even in a business built on surprises, what happened on Raw wasn't just a return, it was a system shock. The locker room felt it. The production crew felt it. Management felt it. Roman and Jey's attack wasn't just physical domination. It was psychological disruption. And now, everyone's looking over their shoulder. Let's start with the immediate reactions. Reports from insiders paint the same picture: tension. Not scripted tension. Real-world discomfort. When the broadcast ended, several superstars were seen pacing in guerrilla. Not in character. Not performing. Processing. Some younger talent thought they'd misread the format sheet. They were told Roman wasn't on the show. There was no pre-match meeting. No run-through. Even the agents seemed partially in the dark. And while this may have been controlled by top-tier creatives, the lower ranks weren't fully briefed. That's intentional. It creates a ripple. Because nothing travels faster through a locker room than uncertainty. Wrestlers rely on knowing what's next. Even if it's just 5 minutes ahead. But Roman's return shattered that structure. And now the morale line has fractured. Some stars are excited, because chaos creates opportunity. Others are frustrated, because they weren't consulted or prepared. One backstage official reportedly said, "This is either brilliant or reckless. No in between." Which perfectly sums up the Roman Jey ambush. It wasn't just about the violence. It was about who was excluded from the loop. And when you're in a company filled with egos and ambitions, exclusion feels like exile. Several Raw superstars reportedly went to higher-ups afterward, asking one question: what does this mean for the show? Because up until now, Raw had been building around consistency. Seth Rollins as the reliable champion. Judgment Day as the resident threat. Cody Rhodes as the heir to hope. Breaker and Reed as rising stars. Roman was gone. Jey was gone. The bloodline story was over there, on SmackDown. Everyone had adjusted. And then, in under 3 minutes, Roman walked back in and wiped out the board. And that move sends a clear signal: there are no more safe zones. No brand is off limits. And that puts everyone, from the opening match guys to the main eventers, on edge. Because if Roman and Jey can show up without notice, hurt whoever they want, and walk out untouched, what's stopping anyone else? The answer? Nothing. That's where the locker room really starts to split. For talent like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, this return raises a dilemma. Do they get involved again? Or stay out of it? They've fought this war before. They know what it costs. Physically. Professionally. Emotionally. And now, with no clear bloodline faction to rally against, just a violent duo, they're left guessing. Is this a new chapter of an old war? Or a whole new fight with different rules? And then there's Cody Rhodes. The American Nightmare. The would-be heir. The man who was supposed to finish the story. He wasn't involved in the ambush. He wasn't even at ringside. But his name came up fast in the aftermath. Because if Roman is back, Cody's story isn't over. And if Jey is back by his side, the betrayal cuts deeper. Cody vouched for Jey. Brought him to Raw. Told the locker room to trust him. And now? Jey just helped cripple the champion Cody respects most. You can bet Cody is fuming. But Cody's too smart to react emotionally. He's going to wait. Plot. Choose his moment. But that moment is coming. Because backstage sources say Cody immediately called a closed-door meeting with producers after the ambush. No cameras. No social media. Just strategy. That tells you everything. Cody isn't out. He's regrouping. And what about the Judgment Day? Raw's current top faction suddenly feels peripheral. They weren't targeted. They weren't involved. But that's the point. Roman didn't attack them, he ignored them. And in WWE, that's worse. Because being ignored by Roman means you're not worth the message. And Judgment Day thrives on control. Now they've been outmaneuvered. Sources say Finn Balor and Damian Priest are pushing for a direct confrontation. Not because it makes storyline sense, but because it puts them back in the conversation. That's the power Roman still holds. He doesn't have to speak. His presence makes people panic. That's what Jay brings too. In the hours after the ambush, several stars posted cryptic messages on social media. Rey Mysterio posted a single word, unbelievable. LA Knight posted a pair of eyes emoji, then deleted it. Rhea Ripley simply tweeted a gif of someone clapping slowly. No one wants to commit. No one wants to be next. And that's the story inside the locker room now. A slow burn psychological takeover. Even if Roman and Jay don't show up next week, their shadow will. Every promo will carry their weight. Every match will be watched through the lens of will they come back? And that makes them the most dangerous men in WWE. Because when the locker room loses rhythm, it loses confidence. And without confidence, everyone becomes a target. That's exactly what Roman wants. He's always been about control. And now he has it again, not with belts, not with declarations, but with presence. And Jay? Jay amplifies that fear because he's unpredictable. He smiles and swings. He laughs and stomps. He's not bound by logic anymore. And everyone in the back knows it. One producer reportedly told a journalist, Jay looks like he's playing a different sport now. There's no hesitation. No second thoughts. That scares people. Because hesitation is safety. It gives you room to breathe. Jay's done giving people room. And Roman? He's letting Jay lead the fear campaign. That's evolution. Backstage is already adjusting. Security's tighter at TV tapings. Scripts are being kept under stricter wraps. Some talent aren't even being told who's booked in the final segment. Paranoia is rising. That's the fallout. Not just bruised bodies. A bruised culture. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso didn't just restart a feud. They restarted a mindset. One that says, if you're not ready, you're already behind. And now, everyone in WWE, from the first match rookies to the main event icons, has to make a choice: stay passive? Or prepare for war? Because Roman and Jay aren't waiting. They've already fired the first shot. And backstage? No one's sleeping easy anymore.